Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are joining us from. We are here today with Alex Robinson, who is in sales with Comet Backup. Good morning, or is it good afternoon for you?
Oh, it's good. Still pretty early in the morning. It's 8 o'clock in
Okay.
the morning here, so bright and early here. Yes.
All right. Well, where is here for the viewers who don't know?
Here is in Christchurch, New Zealand. So
Ah,
we're Southern Hemisphere, and for all you US listeners, it's tomorrow today.
there you go. Well, it is 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And of course, I am in South Carolina in the United States. So we're a long way away from one another. But technology brings us together beautifully here.
Exactly.
So awesome. Well, for those of you who don't know about Comet Backup, Alex, will you tell the audience more a little bit about Comet Backup?
Yeah, absolutely. So the nice thing about Comet is what we do is in the name of our product, Comet Backup. We provide backup services for MSPs. So whether you need to back up, file level backups, or you've got VMs to back up, or anything else, we cover basically a bit of everything. We offer both cloud hosted and self hosted solutions with everything. If you want on-prem storage, we do that. If you want cloud storage, we do that too. So basically, whatever you need, we've probably got you covered.
Awesome. How old is Comet Backup? How old is the company itself?
Well, that's a funny one. We keep thinking ourselves as a startup, but we've been working on Comet for 10 years now, and
Okay.
we've been selling the product since 2017. So we've been around for quite a while now.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, Alex, since you're in sales, I figured it would be you are the prime person to talk to us, give us some pointers about, ways that MSPs can improve their sales process.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is it's probably something we think so much about technology. Whether it's even someone like me as a salesperson in a software company, I spend a lot of my time thinking about technology. But a big part of what my job is, and probably a lot of your jobs are as well, is actually thinking about how do we sell this to our customers, and how do we actually understand what do our customers really need, and how do we communicate that to our customers that we're not just selling, you know we're not just selling a stack of software or hardware or whatever it is that we're selling. We're selling a service. And what does that really mean to a customer when they come to you or you come to them wanting to buy something? So I think it's a really good topic to just stop and think about. So I'm sure it's something a lot of people think, man, I wish I could just close a few more sales. I wish I could just understand my prospects a little bit better. So that's sort of what I'd like to help a little bit with today.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I'm ready to dive in. That sounds like a great topic and one we certainly can all benefit from.
Exactly.
Awesome. So, do you have a certain personality type or disposition? Do you have to have a certain personality type or disposition to be successful in sales?
Yeah, I think that's it's one of those things. I think a lot of us we see movies with salesmen in it, and it's that very kind of yeah, we've all seen The Wolf of Wall Street or movies like that, or maybe
Great
some older
movie, by
movies
the
like
way.
Glenn Ross. That's a classic movie about a salesman, and and nothing. I think a lot of that's pretty far from the truth when it comes to how we actually sell. So no, the short answer is you don't have to be an extrovert to sell. I'm not an extrovert. It's definitely not my wheelhouse to be the most extroverted person in the room. But regardless of your personality type, you can sell. You might approach the way you deal with people a little bit differently. You might approach the sales process a little bit differently. But it's not a barrier to entry. In fact, I think as an introvert, you overthink it all a little bit before you go into things. But really, the key is to just jump into it, and it's a skill you'll build over time as you have more conversations with people. I know that there's no surefire answer to that one particular question other than just get out there and do it. As an introvert, if you're an extrovert, you're probably already, you're happy going out banging on doors and saying hi to people and handing out
Meeting new
business cards and
folks.
Yeah, exactly. Meeting new folks all the time, but as an introvert, we have to acknowledge we have to work a little bit harder at that. But once I think probably the skill as an introvert around this is you get very good at developing systems to manage these kinds of things in your mind, so you can go, well, I approached it in this process, so no, don't let that be a barrier. Don't let that put you off. It doesn't put customers off either, as well. People don't just buy from people they like with that $1 million smile and the handshake. They do buy from people who actually it's not to say don't go out there and be unlikable by any stretch of the imagination, but what I'm saying is people buy from people who can genuinely solve a problem for them and are able to articulate that well. So use that to your advantage, perhaps. I'm sure that you know your products that you're selling really well, so take
I think
advantage of
that's
that.
key. So, Alex, or
Yes.
would you consider yourself being in sales an introvert or an extrovert?
I would say definitely an introvert. I'm perfectly happy to spend a lot of time alone by myself.
I
I
gotcha.
like a good bit of peace and quiet. I'm not a big party person, and I'm not a social butterfly. So, definitely. But I'm still, I've trained myself over the years to just be able to sit here and talk to people and talk, and have engaging conversations about things. So it's a
Yeah.
skill basically that you can work on like anything else. It's not some sort of esoteric and unapproachable part of life.
Well, do you think most people in sales are introvert or extrovert?
Look, to be honest, in my experience, I don't think it dramatically skews one way or the other. I think we get this impression that salespeople are all extroverts because we've met a few extroverted
Right.
salespeople. But I've worked in sales, lots of different industries, um, whether it's face-to-face retail sales, whether it's business-to-business sales, whatever it is, right? I've seen a pretty even split in success between introverts and extroverts. I know amazing, very introverted salespeople who absolutely crush it every month. I know amazing extroverted salespeople who crush it every month. So don't think it's just not a barrier, and it doesn't. Your personality type won't dictate your ability to make sales in the long run. So don't stress it as the is probably the most important thing there.
So, how do you find out when they're really talking to you, the prospect is talking to you about your product? What's the real reason why that? What's the first thing that, like you said, the first thing is probably not the real thing that they want sold, right?
Yeah, I think this is one that comes up a lot. Like you'll start a conversation with someone, and they'll say something like, "Oh, look, I want to change service or provider or whatever it is. My current provider, they just put their price up, and I'm not happy." And it's like,
Sure.
okay, on face value, that's understandable because I think most people, when a price goes up on something, will have a look around and see what else is on the market. But a lot of the times, people will stay with their existing company or provider for anything if the price does go up, because realistically the prices for everything go up over time. We can't beat that. But say take that example. Usually if someone is at that point where they're going to ditch a current provider for something because the price is changing, there's a cascade of things that have gone on beforehand that you want to get the answer to. You want to know, look, what else is going wrong? Was there something where, you know, they were finding getting support or responses on something from their previous company was really slow? Were they not happy with the answers they were getting? Did they feel whatever it was, the software that was being provided to them was, not suitable, or the hardware, whatever it is? You've got to really drill down to find it's not usually just one pain point that makes somebody change providers for something, because of course whatever you're changing, if you're changing from one to another, it's a big job, and it's a big undertaking, and it's going to be disruptive. So usually it's not just a percentage price rise or something like that that's driven that. It's been a cascade. So the question is to ask, to find out what else is behind this. So it's about asking those leading questions around, and it's not necessarily sitting there and saying, well, how else is your current company being no good? It's like, well, what else could we improve on? What else is really important to you, and getting down to those details, because people will start opening up when you start asking them what's important to you, what do you need to
Sure.
see. What's been some issues? And a good question is like, what has been some previous issues that you've had that you'd like us to be able to improve on? Those kinds of things. That's a really good way to ascertain the full picture before you start talking about products and services and gear or technology or anything else, is to find out all that key information.
So, is there any other ways that you can pull that information out of prospects when you are talking to them, trying to sell them on a product of what their previous pain points were? What are some good tips for that?
Yeah, look, I think some really good tips around that is and this probably comes back to a really big part of sales. I think a lot of the times we either just like to give straight answers to questions. We don't ask a lot of questions. So it is just keeping that question asking from you going to them at the start of that process. So we want to ask them about you know what are your expectations? How did you find the previous providers support? Were you happy with the software stack that they were selling, or the products that they were selling? Did those solve problems? Are there some gaps in there perhaps that you feel like they might have missed, or that you would like to add in if you come across to us? It's just keeping asking those questions until you've built out in your mind, or preferably written down on a piece of paper, that list of everything that they're really looking for. That's sort of the intangibles of the process. It's not, I'm looking for, X amounts of seats to, for X amount of dollars or something like that. It's getting that, that in-depth understanding of their business, their situation, and what their goals are long term as well, in terms of, their IT.
Well, you brought up a good point. Understanding what their needs are and their problem points they're trying to solve, because it's probably not the same as for you yourself and as a salesperson.
Yeah. And
So,
that's a real key one. I think a lot of us, I think everybody struggles with this a little bit, and how we frame and think about the products that we're selling. So I'll use myself as an example for this. So I sell backup software to service providers like you. So what I'm selling to you is fundamentally a different thing to what you're selling on to your end user, even though you might also be selling backup services to them. What they see the product as is something different to what you see the product as. So the things that perhaps you're looking for in a product are going to be different to the things your end user is looking for in a product. It's really understanding that differentiation across everything you sell, and also the service that you're offering. What is it doing for the end user? Not like, what widget and gadget and technology and proprietary this and that the software or hardware has. That's interesting probably to all of us, or a lot of us, but we need to understand what is the real problem that our end user has that we're solving. What do they need? So that's a real key one to understand. So really stop and think about that before you just start talking about the product to people.
well, understanding the importance of the sales meetings with a prospect is a big key as well. So, how important is it to prepare, and how do you prepare for a sales meeting with a potential prospect?
Yeah, that's in part going to depend on how you've approached this person. So whether this is you've gone out cold and knocked on a door and you're sitting down for an initial meeting with someone. What's helpful, and this is actually something I feel like there's a paralysis by analysis as well as part of this. And I think as introverts sometimes we like to research. We want to know everything about the company and what they do before we sit down and talk to them, and we'll be looking things up online and finding out. Some of that's helpful. Certainly for me, really key things that I like to know, and this might not necessarily even be something you can find out till you're in a meeting with someone. And don't be worried if you have to wait till a meeting to find information. But is to know firstly, who are you dealing with when you initially meet someone, and who is the decision maker in this process. Now, this really a lot of this depends. If you're dealing with very small businesses, quite often you are going to be talking directly to the decision maker right out of the gate. If you're dealing with a larger organization, it's really helpful to know who is actually the person who has to sign the check on this
Yep.
deal, and how do we include them in the process, and find out what are they actually looking for in this? Not just the person that's sort of been tasked with, say, shopping around, or the person who's going to be involved in the implementation process of all of this, but what is the key decision maker looking for? And this is something I've seen, a number of times, even when personally I've been, say, looking at software platforms that we're going to use internally. I'll talk to a salesperson from a company, and they never once ask me, am I the decision maker in this process? Or who do I need to make a recommendation to? What resources does the person I'm talking to need to take through to their seniors to get approval for something? So that's actually almost the most important things that I like to know is who am I dealing with when I go into a meeting, and try and find that out as soon as possible. I think everything else around their current situation. There's things that people will tell you ahead of the meetings, and then there's the truth that comes out during the meetings. So, it's good to if you get some basic overview before you sit down with someone around the size and scope of what they're looking for. That's great. But more often than not, I find that what you initially hear in an initial approach to someone, things change and evolve quite quickly as you go into a meeting. So don't be too alarmed by that as well. But really find out who you need to deal with first.
Well, we've done a great job of talking about, how to prepare for that sales meeting. But I've got a question for you. During the sales meeting, is it most important that you listen or that you talk about your product? What would you say is the most important? I know we need to do both, but
Mm.
one needs to take precedent over the other.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the listening and it's not just passive listening. I think when we say listening, you're not a counselor.
All right.
Well, your job is to ask questions that get to the heart of what someone's looking for. So ask questions, really listen to the response, and ask more questions. Your job's not actually to sit there and just be a question answerer for the prospect coming in, or for the customer coming in. So you want to take the lead and ask as many questions as possible. And what questions you need to ask are going to really depend on you and your business and your situation. But really, those questions are around trying to understand, not just a list of, this company has ABC needs, XYZ. That's important, but it's not the critical thing. The critical thing is understanding what what an ongoing relationship as a service business is going to be like with these people. So get a feel for them, understand what potential issues they may have had in the past that have brought them to you. I think let's take a really simple question here these kinds of questions that people get tripped up on. Someone might ask you in a sales meeting, do you offer round the clock support? Now, I think initially people jump in and think, oh, that's a yes no answer. And they're going to make the assumption that if someone asks that question, they definitely want to hear a yes. But that might not be the case. So, what you really want to find out is rather than making an assumption, is ask them, could you tell me a little bit more about why that's important to you? Or, have you had some experiences in the past where you required round the clock support? It could be, it could be a many different reasons to ask that question. Maybe they're asking the question about round the clock support just because they found the support from a previous company slow or lacking. It's not actually that they need to call you at 2 in the morning. Or it could be, yeah, and that's the thing, that's a
Well, that's
big
a great
question
way
I get
to
asked a lot. Yeah,
that's a great way to get to the discovery process about what the
exactly.
client's true needs are.
Mm. And it could be actually the opposite of that. They might be asking that question because they're like, well, we don't want to pay extra for round the clock support. In which case, if you tell them yes, they might be feeling like, whoa, wait a minute, these guys might be way out of my price range because they're offering this round the clock support. Surely that's going to be expensive. So it's getting to the bottom of that and find out, why they're asking the question, not just the yes or no answer to the question. Because whichever way that is and whichever way your answer is, you can frame a positive response out of that potentially, rather than just you know potentially disqualifying yourself immediately with the wrong yes or no answer. So just think about things from that approach.
Well, what would you say is a common mistake that a lot of salespeople make during the sales process?
I think a really big mistake is a lot of salespeople come in heavy talking about, I've got product ABC that does this and does this and does this and has this feature and has that feature and does this and does that. Now, this is something I learned this a long time ago, actually. One of the first things you learn when you work in retail, especially selling electronics. I used to, for a long, long time, I worked in the photographics industry. So I've done anything and everything you can think of to do with cameras and photography. But you can't make that assumption that that person walking through the door has any interest in technology or any interest in these things. So going in there and just rattling off a list of technical things can actually alienate the person pretty quickly because they don't understand what you're talking about. You need to ascertain first at what level you can communicate these things to them. That's part of that question asking and answering process. Now, you might meet someone who's just as techy as you are, and you can go and you have an amazing conversation. So sometimes it's really fun. You find someone who can talk just as much tech as you can or more, and that's But it's about finding the level at which to communicate these things to. So you're not making them feel like, oh, this person is just talking right over me, or opposite of that, you're not coming across as being condescending or patronizing with the way you oversimplify things. So getting that feeling first before you talk about products is I think a really key thing because it's not just a product they're looking for.
That's right. That's right. They're looking for a partner in most cases.
Exactly.
Yep. Awesome. Well, Alex, thank you so much. Did you have anything else you wanted to share about the sales process? Um,
Um, I've got one more thing
all
that I
right.
always bring up with sales process is a qualified no from a prospect is still a valuable answer. And this is something I know a lot of people in sales, we only like to hear the yes, I'll take it, I'll buy it, sign, where do I sign? Where do I send a check? Actually, it's fine to get a no from people. And to be honest with you, if I'm going to get a no from someone, I like to get a no as soon as possible. So if I can get a no in an initial sales meeting, that's good. But what you want with a no is a qualified no. So that means you understand exactly why they said no to you or your service or your business or whatever you're offering. It's really key to know why. That helps you first. It might actually a few different things. It could show you where could you improve your products and services that you're offering, or does it help you understand better what kind of companies or prospects that you want to approach in the future about this? You take that information and you can actually learn something from it. If someone just says no and ghosts you with no, clear indication, that's the worst outcome. But if you can get a good no that is helpful and provides feedback, you can use that, for your future sales conversations. So don't be afraid of no as long as it's qualified.
Well, speaking of no, is there any pointers to flipping a no around into a yes from a prospect?
You can, I think that's a $1 million question, but it really depends on the situation. If you've got that qualified no, and there's something in that qualified no that you can make an improvement on, then absolutely you can flip that around. Now, if they're just they're like, oh, it's too expensive. Well, that's something you can, you don't necessarily want to overcome that by saying, oh, well, I'll discount it for you. That's the worst
Right.
outcome, because then it's a race to the bottom. Um, Oftentimes, though, that can be turned around by having a real deep conversation and say, look, maybe, perhaps they're saying it's too expensive compared to what they've previously been doing. But hey, maybe the previous thing you have been doing, it just didn't work for you at that price point anyway, and realistically, it's not going to. So I think, let's have a conversation around how, you can reframe that, rethink about spending a little bit more money, let's be frank, on actually solving the problem. So, if it's something that you can resolve or they can make a change on, it is a case of just talking them through that process and don't be afraid to keep that conversation going when someone gives you an initial rejection around one particular point. Don't give up on, based on that. And don't be afraid to follow up with people. This is the other big one. Don't be afraid to follow up with people you've had a no from. It's not
Very
not the
good.
case. I know there's salespeople get a bad reputation for pestering people till the ends of the earth. But there is nothing stopping you. Give that person a call in, 3 months' time, next year. See if the situation has changed. Maybe your situation has changed. You've already had that initial conversation. You have the details on file. It's so much cheaper and easier to contact an existing prospect that you may be able to solve the problem for now than it is to go out and hunt for new ones. So maybe don't be afraid to come back to the no's again in the future if you think you can help them later on.
That's awesome. Well, and a lot of people don't even think about that. Just let some time go by and reach back out to them. Nothing says you can't do
Exactly.
that. So
Exactly.
genius. Well, Alex, thank you so much for taking the time to be a guest today. What is the best way if we've got viewers who are interested in learning more about Comet Backup? Where can they start?
Yeah, absolutely. So, if you want to get in touch with me directly and just have a conversation, you can reach me at alex@cometbackup.com. Very, very simple and easy. Or if you want to test out Comet Backup and see what we can do for you, just go to cometbackup.com. Click on the free trial button. It's right there at the top of the page, and you can start a no strings attached trial. There's no credit cards required. We're not going to hound you to the ends of the earth for just trying us out or anything like that. We'd just love for you to be able to see what we can do. And if you go and sign up for a free trial, use the promo code ITBOG, so ITBOG. You'll get $100 bonus credit on your account that's valid for the first 90 days. So it's a nice little bit extra to help you get in the door with us if you'd like to try out our services. And even if you go to commentbackup.com, you can even book a call directly with me from the homepage. Just click on the speak to sales button. More than likely, you'll wind up in a conversation with me. And I promise I won't use any sneaky sales tactics on you. We'll just have a real conversation about what you might need and how we could probably solve that problem for you.
Awesome. Well, Alex, it was certainly a pleasure picking your brain about improving the sales process for MSPs. I really appreciate it, and I'll look forward to having another conversation with you soon.
Perfect. Thanks very much,
Awesome.
Scott. It was good to talk today.
Have a great day. See you.
You too.
Bye.
All right, bye.